It's almost like we don't even know how good we can feel as humans. Like the times that I have gone in nature, for example, when I was in Bali and Costa Rica and places where it's like jungle, I'm falling asleep early, easily. I'm waking up easily. Just being off social media for a few days, like my brain changes and this like constant like anxiety and need to respond, need to check starts to go away. And, I live in LA. I live in a city that I'm like, I wonder just how much of my mood is actually a reflection of my environment, that if I lived in nature, I would probably be way more radiant.
I mean, I relate to that. I have a home in Costa Rica, actually, where I spend like 4 months a year. And when I'm there, same thing, at 6, 7 o'clock, I can go to bed. And most adults do that there, actually. And you get up at like 4:30.
That's crazy.
And you're very in tune with nature. And yeah, it's different being in a big city.
Welcome back to the Highest Self podcast. My name is Sahar Rose, and on this podcast, I love to take spiritual concepts and make them modern, grounded, and relatable so they can actually serve your needs. So I came to the spiritual journey like many of you because of my health issues. Started with digestive issues, hormonal imbalances, and no doctor could figure out what was going on with me. And that's what brought me on a journey of self-healing. I just became obsessed with learning everything about health, which brought me to traditional Chinese medicine and then Ayurveda, which that Ayurveda for me was like really the bridge. I ended up living in India for 2 years, studying Ayurveda, becoming an Ayurvedic practitioner, writing 3 books on Ayurveda. And that's really how I started my career as an Ayurvedic practitioner. And then that brought me deeper into the spiritual components of our health and how sometimes the reason why we are having these responses like digestive issues is because we cannot digest all of our emotions. Sometimes we have hormonal imbalances because we were out of touch with our feminine. And I started to dive deeper into really seeing that mind, body, and soul connection. So that made me really just go deeper into myself and who am I? And ultimately, what is the purpose of health? I feel so many of us, when we're on a healing journey, we're just eyes on the prize of I need to get better. I need to get better. And then you get better. And it's like, now what do I do with this health? What is the purpose of health? And for me, that purpose was my dharma, my soul's expression, my creativity, which led to me going on this journey of starting this podcast now almost 8 years ago, which is freaking crazy. Writing books, and then last year stepping into my full artistry as a musician and creating my album, and the journey goes on. And now I can really intuitively tell when my body is like slightly going out of balance or craving different things. Or, I was noticing I actually started drinking coffee like a few years ago. I wasn't drinking coffee, started drinking it, but like more recently I've just had this aversion to it again. And I'm like, interesting. I can feel my body is a bit more dehydrated. So it's whereas before maybe I would have ignored it, been like, oh, it's just part of my routine, and kept going until maybe later I would have had a dehydration issue later on. So it's these little ways that as we become more intuitive, we are more connected with energy, we are more connected into the unseen, and that brings us into quantum science. So a lot of us have heard the word quantum physics. I know for myself and a lot of us women, it goes over our heads. And I try, Deepak Chopra wrote the forewords of 3 of my books, and he's huge into quantum science. And for me, it's something that I can feel it's true, but I don't know the research behind it. I don't know the science behind it. I don't know how to measure it. So I'm super excited to bring on Philip on the podcast today. He's the founder of Leela Quantum Technologies, and he's going to be sharing with us what is quantum energy, what is quantum healing, because that really is where our health industry, I feel, one day will go into not being so focused on you're sick, here's the pill. But instead, how can we start to notice these little shifts? How can we start to up level things like the foods that we're eating, the water we're drinking, and then the conversations we're having, and the list goes on, to prevent us from even getting there? Because I do believe as humans, we were meant to live these radiantly long lives. In the Vedas, they said the average human lived 120 years. This is why in Vedic astrology, a lifespan is 120 years, and you are supposed to go through all of these dashas time periods. But as we, forgot and consciousness descended, lifespans became shorter. But I believe right now, with this remembrance that we're experiencing, they're beginning to get longer. We're seeing it's beginning to get longer, but it's a lot of times, what's the quality of life at the end of those years? And I feel a lot of us right now Like I'm 33 years old. I feel like I look better than I ever have before because a lot of us were reverse aging because we're up leveling in our consciousness. And then that's showing up in how we express ourselves in the world. And I'm just like, yes, my mantra is I keep getting hotter every day. Period. And so it is. And that's the beauty of when we start to really dive into energy and holistic healing and the ways that everything are connected. So I'm super excited to dive in. I know I'm going to be learning a lot today. So let's welcome Philip to the Highest Self podcast. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Yay. I'm excited to have you here. So before we get into it, for people who are like, what does the word quantum energy even mean? Can you give us a little like 101?
Yes, and there's obviously different ways on how to explain it, and I try to not be as scientific because then we lose people. I think it first and foremost can be felt. And when we talk about quantum energy, it's the energy behind the matter. It's also the energy that we have in each of our cells. So literally in all of our cells, there are vibrating quantum fields. And that energy can be felt in meditation, for example. So if we just close our eyes and we feel there's more than just our body, we feel this vibration and we can actually tap into that deeper and deeper the deeper we go. And there's ways to actually tap into that even more, obviously through spiritual practices, but then there's technologies out there. And that is the quantum energy, the energy behind the matter, because we think of ourselves as solid, right? And we're not. We're at core energy and frequency. And in between, we're over 99% water on a molecular weight level, which also we don't really think about in our daily lives when we drive our cars, right? But that's the truth. And yeah, what you said is important. I think also the future of medicine will go there because if we are energy and frequency at core, of course, we can influence our systems and everyone else's with frequencies and with energy. So yeah, it may be a new concept for people, but in 5 years, it'll be the norm.
Yeah. I feel a lot of us can tell, like, I love just the practice of like putting your hands like this, like next to each other, and you can start to just feel the energy between your fingers. And it's just, I remember in like high school for the first time I did that and I was like, oh my God, I'm feeling the energy ball. And then even right now I'm doing it and it's expanding and it's expanding. Like this is a practice you're watching on video, start to pulse your fingers with each other and you can really have a direct experience with energy. So how can we, like, are there ways if someone feels they're not attuned to energy as much, how can they start feeling it? How can it become more real for them?
I think it's a great question because nowadays I find that 99% of the people, they can't even feel themselves anymore. You ask them, how do you feel? And they give you an answer and it's not actually how they feel. So to be honest, I have a different suggestion for them other than meditation in the beginning to literally take a minute every morning when they wake up. The first thing they do, don't talk to anyone, don't pick up your phone, just keep being with yourself, ask yourself, how do I feel? And don't expect an answer, just listen and do that for 2 weeks. And then at nights as well, you go to bed and the last thing you do before you fall asleep, you ask, how do I feel? How was my day? And don't have a conversation, don't expect anything, but just listen, because that is how we start to listen to our inner voice again. And it's very important. And once we do that, we can actually acknowledge more what's inside of us. We can feel others more, and we can also tap into energies more. That's very interesting, actually, because that's how we train it very, very fast. Do that 2-3 weeks, and you'll be way more perceptive, and you can perceive energies in a different way. And there's a lot more things to do, obviously. You can meditate, you can, you can start tapping into your intuition, right? That's a good practice too. We think so much, like thinking, okay, what should I do today? But why don't you just ask your heart? What do I feel like doing? Start asking these questions if you can, and do that more and more. And I think that's how you tap into it.
So how can we tell if we're picking up on an energy or it's more of like an emotion that we're holding on to?
Okay, well, that's obviously something we'll run into then throughout the process. And it's difficult, I would say, in the beginning. It's difficult. It takes practice. Like if we want to be a Wimbledon champ, we need to practice tennis. And that's the same thing. Like we all have that ability to really tune in with our own inner power and to do quite amazing things energetically. But we need to practice that muscle that we haven't practiced for most of our lives, in many cases, most cases. So I think one aspect to look at is the contraction of energy. Do we feel energetically contracted, or do we feel expanded energetically? That's something you can find out for yourself. And then if you ask these questions, or you want to do something, and if it comes from the head and it's really not what resonates with your true self, most likely it doesn't feel great on all levels, and you don't feel very expanded energetically. You feel maybe contracted, or there's some fear there, or tension, things like that. So that's how you start noticing it. But it is about paying attention more and more, because you can't learn that in just 1 week.
Yeah, I feel like a good way to start is even just after what you eat. Like I started my journey of realizing, okay, when I eat pizza late at night, I don't feel so great after. The day after I drink, even 2 days after I drink alcohol, I could just feel that. And then I was like, it's not worth the maybe 1 hour of semi-fun I'm having to feel 2 days of feeling like crap. And then you just become so much more sensitive. But then I can see this double-edged sword of like becoming like so sensitive that like, so how do we know what's our energy versus we're picking up on EMFs and Wi-Fi and all of the things?
So EMF and Wi-Fi is relatively easy to distinguish, because those are stressors to us, and we can verify that with all kinds of different measures. It has an impact on the autonomic nervous system, has an impact on your blood. So your blood actually tends to clot relatively fast if you're in a Wi-Fi environment, and before that you weren't, then that's what the blood does. And energetically, it's a stress. So you feel more of this contraction energetically, and it doesn't really feel like yourself. If we're fully balanced, we feel great, right? And we kind of know that feeling. And then if we add these stressors to our life suddenly, then we contract energetically, and we have something that we always need to neutralize ourselves, right? So it adds stress the whole time.
Because you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to make a quick assumption about you. Your friends come to you for advice. Whenever you're at a party, someone corners you at the side of the snack table and starts telling you all of their childhood traumas. And you actually love diving deep into spiritual topics, and you have a really good way of communicating with people. So the best way to actually create a career doing this is through coaching. But I know a lot of people, they're like, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know what type of coach I would be. So I've created a quick, easy quiz to discover your unique coaching style. So there are 3 categories: the intuitive, transformational, or empathetic coach. So the intuitive one really works with your intuition. You're able to receive downloads. You just have insights about people. The transformational one has more of that fire energy. You love to keep it real and help people go through the deepest phoenix rising from the ashes moments in their lives. And the empathetic coach really loves to listen, hold space. They're very grounded, nurturing. So if you're curious which type you are, you can try my free quiz at quiz.highestselfinstitute.com. Again, that's quiz.highestselfinstitute.com, which is my school that certifies spiritual life coaches. And you can find that link in the show notes. I'm super excited to see what type of coach you are, because I'm gonna hire you one day. So trust your intuition, trust your inner wisdom, trust your inner guidance, close your eyes and listen. It's almost like we don't even know how good we can feel as humans. Like the times that I have gone in nature, for example, when I was in Bali and Costa Rica and places where it's like jungle, I'm falling asleep early, easily. I'm waking up easily. Just being off social media for a few days, like my brain changes, and this like constant like anxiety and need to respond, need to check starts to go away. And, I live in LA. I live in a city that I'm like, I wonder just how much of my mood is actually a reflection of my environment, that if I lived in nature, I would probably be way more radiant.
I mean, I relate to that. I have a home in Costa Rica, actually, where I spend like 4 months a year. And when I'm there, same thing, at 6, 7 o'clock, I can go to bed. And most adults do that there, actually. And you get up at like 4:30.
That's crazy.
And you're very in tune with nature. And yeah, it's different being in a big city. I mean, it has advantages too, but we're exposed to a lot of stress.
Yeah. So one of the big things a lot of people talk about are EMFs. What are EMFs?
Yeah, electromagnetic fields. And They come from cell phones, for example, and 4G, 5G, 3G, all of those G's, basically Wi-Fi. That's all radiation that is there. It can be measured. It's electromagnetic, and it's non-native, so it's nothing that comes from the sun. It's something that is artificially created, basically. And it could come from microwaves. It could come from just a TV, having a TV on. Cars, for example. So it's a big deal.
I've heard
actually.
electric cars have much higher rates.
Yep, that's very true. So all the cars nowadays have way higher EMF than in the past because of all the electronics. But then, electric cars are really at the top of that. It's great, and that's easy to measure, frankly. So don't take my word for it. You can just take an EMF meter and then measure it. And then maybe we had done a study actually on that, so I know quite a bit about it. And you can also then study, okay, what happens after I drive for an hour? Because then the exposure is way higher. What happens if I'm also on the phone? What if I have a passenger and who's also on the phone? Because then it all amplifies and you're literally getting blasted. And the worst thing is if you charge your car. So if you have an electric car,
sitting in the car,
yeah, don't
intuitively,
be in the car,
I felt something was. I don't even have a car, but I was in my friend's electrical car and we were charging it. And I was like, do you guys feel that buzzing? They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, something's like shaking in the car. They're like, no, it's not. I could feel it.
Yeah, and that's because you're very tuned in, and most people are not very tuned in, so they don't feel it. But they notice it at some point because of migraines or even chronic migraines they develop, to a point where when people have developed that, they even get these migraines when they're in a different car, just because that's how the body reacts. It's like this traumatic experience, right? So if you had an accident in a certain situation once, if a similar situation comes again, you're starting to do this already. And so we have talked to a lot of people with chronic migraines because of electric cars. And that's, one of the reasons why we're doing what we're doing to help mitigate that, because there are solutions. It's not all bad. And the solution isn't going to be, we're going to tear down all 5G towers now, right? That's wishful thinking.
Late, yeah.
That's not going to happen. So we need to find ways on how we can live with it so we have the benefits of good technology and mitigate the disadvantages.
Yeah. Another thing that I'm guilty of using are AirPods. So can you tell us a little bit about AirPods and the EMFs in that?
Yeah, that's actually, so if you don't use tech like ours, where you charge these AirPods and then afterwards use them, because then you don't have an issue with them anymore, you literally are blasting your brain, and it's a very, very strong signal. So it's really not good for you. And if you measured your heart rate variability, your blood, and even your brain waves before and after using or during using, you would see that. But again, there are ways to mitigate that. Mm-hmm. So it's not, people will see me with AirPods because I don't have a problem wearing those.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to know because, at first when AirPods came out, I was like, I'm not using them. I'm sticking to wired. I stuck to wired for a really long time. Then someone gave me AirPods and I was like, oh, wow, this is so nice. I can move freely. I don't have the wire. And it was tempting to just, I produce music. So it was so tempting to just, even at home, when I'm by myself, want to keep them on because I can hear the music so much more. And we'll talk about how your technology helps mitigate that. But I think most people have no idea. Or turning on Bluetooth in our car, yep. These things like that are, I remember I once bought this bed frame that the back can go up. It was like an electrical bed frame. I was like, oh, that's so cool, kind of like the hospital. And our mutual friend, Luke, and his wife were at my place and he had his EMF scanner. He was scanning my whole place because they were staying there that weekend and he had to make sure it was EMF free. And he scanned the bed frame. He was like, this is off the charts. And I thankfully had just gone and I returned it because I would have been sleeping on that every night.
Yep. Yeah. You find out these things. And then, one other aspect is that it's not just that for humans, it's also for plants, but also for animals, for our doggies, cats, and so on. So they have that impact as well because it's not natural and they have to fight it off all the time as well. So if we're just aware of it, we can mitigate some of these things.
Yeah. What do you think of like at the airport where they have those things you have to go through? You have to put your hands up like the Jay-Z sign, like the more intense ones. What do you think of that?
Yeah. They have an impact. I feel it when I go through it. So,
I always opt out because, you could do the pat down.
Yeah, I mostly travel with my dog, so that's an automatic. You don't have to go through that. Yeah. Indeed. Yeah. You can wear, one of those heel capsules or something like that. Or, if people don't have anything that they can use that helps them, just at least be aware, but don't get into fear. I mean, that I'm telling that to the listeners, and just expand from the inside. Just expand as if you're creating a big bubble around you. And that helps you a little bit, because we know from all the testing we had done that if someone is very, very tuned in with a consciousness level, for example, they have less issues than people that are not at all in that. And if you're in fear, it actually is worse, because that is a very low vibrational level.
Yes. And I'm sharing this with you guys not to scare you. It's not like, okay, and this, that. I just didn't know these things personally. So I feel like the listeners should know, just to be aware that we also have like ways that we can opt out and do things differently. Another one I'll add before we start going to something a little bit more positive, holding onto your phone when you're charging it.
Yeah.
I have heard while it's charging,
yes.
Whereas what do most of us do before we go to sleep?
Yep.
The phone's charging and it's in our hands.
Yep, exactly. So that is by a multiple. It's not just marginally stronger than the radiation, it's a lot. So you have to either use technology
get away from me. Stupid phone, you're ruining my life.
Yeah, or charge it when you take a shower in the next morning. Right?
Yeah.
So that's also a way to do it.
Yeah, even just like not having our phones in our rooms, which is tempting because, it's hard because we use our phones as our clocks.
Yeah.
And something I did, but I need to like stick to, is using an alarm clock, like using just an old school clock, not using your phone for everything. So we're in this world right now, but you mentioned the states of consciousness and how as we ascend in states of consciousness, because right now we're a little bit fearful, but we can ascend in states of consciousness. And that actually like gives us that ability to be in the Wi-Fi and the technology and things like that. You and I are not in Costa Rica right now. We're still pretty high vibe, though we're in an apartment building with Wi-Fi, because we take care of our consciousness. So can you speak a little bit about like the states of consciousness? And I know there are like numbers correlated, and I remember learning about that. It was really interesting.
Yep. So there's obviously different ways on how to look at it, but there's Dr. David Hawkins, who maybe 20, 25 years ago did some amazing work in regards to consciousness. And he wrote a book, Power versus Force, and set up this consciousness scale from 0 to 1,000 at the time, I must say, and we'll get into that, where the low levels of consciousness are anger, shame, guilt, fear. That's pretty much like if you just imagining, but not for long, don't get into it, these states. That's a low vibrational state, and it really drags you down energetically, and it makes you susceptible to negative energy. So you're calling in, actually, when you're in anger, you call in more anger into your life. And when you're in fear, you call in the things you fear. That's how reality works, at least this reality. And then if we walk into higher levels of consciousness, like 500 would be unconditional love or joy, then that is also what we call into our lives, what we have in our lives. And then you get into the enlightenment zone, basically. That's how he defined it. And then he did, I don't know, like 100,000 different tests, actually. He was muscle testing, but in a very scientific way. It's quite interesting what he found out, because you can calibrate any location, any person, basically anything on the so-called Hawkins scale and see where is that consciousness level. And obviously can fluctuate, right? And as a human, we're dynamic, right? We're not always at the same level, and we're not always on average, let's say at 600, because we may have some parts where we're like getting triggered. There's, maybe I'm angry because of this, right? Or there's just an accident happening, my car is broken, and I can still be a little bit angry and then just let that pass, still be at a high level. So just so people understand, it's like an average that can be measured. And so if we can work on increasing our consciousness level, we're increasing our vibration, and we're leaving these low states of consciousness. And again, we become this attractor field for different things in our lives. And actually we get different insights. We start to meet different people. We have different synchronicities. We have suddenly a better life because we call in things from a different level, if that makes sense. And it's something that we can only really do with inner consciousness work, with certain technologies that can help with raising the consciousness. If we've ever been to a dinner with an enlightened being, for example, then we know what happens, right? We go to that dinner, and when we leave that dinner, we're shining bright also, right? We're uplifted. So that's what I'm talking about, this raising that vibration.
Totally, because I believe the universe responds to how we feel inside. So if our plot line is the world is out to get me, or everything is difficult, or everything is unfair, I never get what I want, the universe is like, okay, that's the plot line. We will make that happen. Yeah. And if it is, miracles happen every single day, it keeps getting better, I am just so amazed by all the blessings in my life. The universe is like, okay, we will deliver. I think what's hard is when you're in a reality that's not what you want, and then to be like, everything keeps getting better, and it's like, feels like it's getting worse. But I feel like sometimes our souls chose for things to get quote unquote worse to give us that like rebound that we need to then skyrocket forward into a new reality, which is like quantum leaping, to quantum leap into a new reality that we would have never, or would have taken a very long time to get to without that breakdown on your knees moment that like causes you to redefine and change everything, which could be a health challenge or a divorce or getting fired or anything like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So for example, my wife, who I'm now separated from, she had the chronic Lyme disease. And when that happened, obviously that's a difficult thing to deal with. And then people tell you can't heal it and all of that. But that was a teacher for her. And that sparked actually my biggest passion in me that I hadn't known before, finding out the next best stuff in biohacking, bioenergy hacking, basically, and leading to some pretty cool developments. And looking back, the best thing that could have ever happened, right? For her, for me. And by the way, she's also completely healed. So, it's a good thing in the end.
Yeah, I think without without my health challenges, I would have never gotten into spirituality. I would have never, I wasn't even interested in health. You're not interested into it until you have to be,
Exactly.
And all of these things. So can you speak a little bit about like these higher states of consciousness, like joy and compassion, and maybe the different numbers they're correlated with?
Yeah. So 100, 200, 300 are very low levels of consciousness. Even the level of reason is still relatively low. I mean, that's not really where we want to be nowadays. And then the 500 is the unconditional love. And then 540 is joy. There's not too many other levels that he described. And then it really goes from 700 to 1000 on his scale. That's the enlightenment zone. However, so when he said that and when he wrote that down in his book, things were different on Earth. Things have shifted quite significantly. And that's actually a very positive message, because at the time, people couldn't really vibrate on a higher level. He couldn't see it at the time, at least, and objects couldn't vibrate higher. And he also said a person can just increase their own consciousness level by just a few points over a lifetime, and it's completely not true anymore. So that has shifted, because you can do quantum leaps actually within a lifetime, and actually within possibly years and even days you can do leaps. And so the 1000 level or limit isn't there anymore. And we had that check over and over and over again. It is not there anymore. So that has stretched completely, because energy levels on Earth have shifted like 10 to 15 years ago. And from that point on, it's actually not Earth that we need to be concerned about. It's actually not at all. It's just humanity, frankly, because now it's our time to actually grow up and wake up, because Earth has done that already. Earth became a conscious creator like 10, 15 years ago. That may sound a little abstract here, but energetically, the constraints that we had on Earth that literally put like this constraining bubble around our energetic expansion as humanity isn't there anymore. It's completely gone. So now we can just awaken. We can awaken. Also, there's a mass awakening possible on an individual level, on a mass level, and that is great news. because we can tap into these levels. We're not constrained anymore. And I mean, have been these experiments, right, with animals, I think, where they put them in a box, and each time they hit the box, they get an electric shock or something like that. At some point, you put that box away, and then they still wouldn't leave it. Like, maybe we're a little bit in this situation right now where a lot of people still like think or feel they can't go further, but you actually can go very far nowadays.
Oh, it's so crazy. I saw this picture, and it was a horse that was tied to a little plastic flimsy chair. And it's like, you're the horse. That horse is free.
Yeah.
That horse can gallop away. That chair is 1 pound, but it thinks, I'm chained to this chair. I can't move.
Yeah.
I want you to tell me a little bit more about how Earth changed its mind 10 to 15 years ago, and there's no cap on it. What happened here? What was this decision?
Yeah. So, it wasn't really a decision. I think things just happened because there's only consciousness in the end of the day, and consciousness is eternal and it's infinite. There's no beginning and there's no end. That's a paradox, because in this reality, we're just an aspect of that consciousness, and we get to experience all of that in a different way, very limited, fueled with time, for example. Overall, consciousness doesn't have that. So it's just, things are just progressing and happening, and it was just time for Earth to just get to the next level, right? It was just a development stage, basically. But the same thing is happening with humanity right now. And, a lot of people are very concerned about the bad things that are happening and everything is so terrible. Well, it may look terrible, but it's all a process, right? So if I have a wound somewhere, it hurts. And then in the healing process, at some point, there's a point where the wound looks super ugly. It's probably the ugliest it's ever looked, but it's the point of where it really heals, and afterwards it's really healed. So that is where we're at right now as humanity. And yeah, Earth has just fulfilled that already. So it's already there. So there's no boundaries anymore as far as that goes. And, I couldn't tell you anything other than it was just time for it to happen.
Do you see yourself one day starting a podcast, writing books, speaking on stages, sharing your message with the world? But the thing is, you are afraid that you're not a good enough speaker yet. Maybe you're inspired by people like me and Gabby Bernstein, and you have it within yourself too, but you just don't know where to start. Well, I have gotten this question so many times, and this is why I've created my Speak with Soul 21-day method. This guides you from awkward to confident speaker in just 3 weeks' time. I guide you through daily prompts, practices, and share all of the wisdom that I have learned as a professional speaker, podcaster, author, and someone who literally makes a living sharing my voice as well as through music, and how you can too in your own unique way. So the testimonials from Speak with Soul are insane. I have seen people literally be hired to host their own radio shows. Hundreds of people start their own podcasts, create YouTube channels, IG live series, get book deals, the list goes on. So whether you want to professionally share your voice or just get better in conversation and connection and just feel more confident in what you say and not feel like you're so in your head, and release any fears or hesitations you have around the way that your voice sounds and its pitch, well, this course covers all of it. So it's just 10-minute daily videos for 21 days that I promise you, if you follow this process, you will be a completely other person on the other side. Because the truth is, when is the last time you spent any time on your speaking? For most of us, it was maybe an awkward speech in high school, and we never touched it again. So speaking is the way that we communicate with the world. It's the most important thing we can do. It's the way that we get our message across. And I know if you're listening to this podcast, you have a really important message to share, because regular people don't listen to this podcast. So if you're feeling the call, come join me in Speak with Soul. I have a special 25% off discount for you listed below. So head over to the show notes or over to speakwithsoulcourse.com. That's speakwithsoulcourse.com to receive the 25% off right now. And you can also find that link in the show notes. I'm so excited to hopefully be on your podcast. Is it related to the Schumann frequency, the Schumann resonance?
Well, I think the the Schumann resonance is related to that. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's what I would be saying.
And the solar storms as well that we're seeing.
Yeah, in our time right now, the quote unquote awakening or expansion of consciousness that is happening, the moving into the age of knowing out of the so-called Kali Yuga, those are all, that is all happening. And these things are happening because it's all happening. Mm-hmm. That makes sense, right? So we need these triggers in order to also react and get to a different level. So with these solar storms that people are so concerned about, from a consciousness perspective, it's amazing. It's amazing what's coming there as a blast. Mm-hmm. Some people may not want that more people wake up, but if you're all about, waking up and development, then that's a good thing.
Do you think it's going to be a question of whether humanity will make it or not on this new planet?
That's not a question for me. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are not, quote unquote, going to make it. It's just very obvious. Actually, we have the scissor effect. We have just one part going, actually being very stuck in the 3D world. And, they're not really getting out of it. And they don't, it's free will, right? So the universe works based on free will. So no one is going to be forced to do anything, and you can never force truly anyone to do anything. And the other part is, ascending, and that's one word you could use, but it's literally moving into the next level, into the next dimension. And it's already happening. You can notice it today, even maybe not in an extreme final state, but you can talk to someone that has the same experiences, reads the same things and looks at the same things, but has a completely different understanding of things. And they think of the world as, it's just all this narrative and it's all happening just because of this and because of that. And you're looking at it like, that's an interesting point of view, but you're looking from this overall perspective. You're like, oh my God, is that small? That point of view, is that so small? You don't see anything of what's actually happening, but that's just how it is. When they live still in our world, but it's two different perceptions.
It's different. Yeah, it's different dimensions. I feel in my lifetime, I first really noticed it in 2012. I was very, very deep into my yoga practice, but I was the only kind of spiritual person around me. I did not know one other person. But that's how I kind of started to go online and be like, there's one person over there in this part and the one person there. Then obviously 2020, huge, just the way everyone responded to it. And then you could kind of just feel levels of consciousness. And I even did a podcast episode here about the great split that was happening.
Yeah. And
I feel that awoken a lot of people, and then kind of the aftermath of seeing what was true and what was not, and the fear agendas. And now I feel this year of 2024, which in the Gene Keys, which that book was written in the 80s and it's based on the I Ching, which is ancient Chinese astrology, talks about this huge shift that's going to happen between 2020 to 2027, moving in from that Kali Yuga, as they say, Kali Yuga, era of darkness, to Sat Yuga, era of light. And they say 2020 is going to be the beginning. 2024 will be the apex of it, which I feel we're seeing with this war happening and lack of helping, but also realizing all the systems involved. And it's just eye-opening for people because wars have been happening the whole time. We just haven't noticed it. And then they say from 2024 to 2027, it's going to be starting to build this new world. And then 2027, we're going to see the very beginning of it. Now, in Vedic astrology, some say we're in the golden era. Some say we're not going to experience it in this lifetime. We don't really know the date. But I think we're all feeling it. And I know I started having these reoccurring dreams around 2020 that there would be on this earth, and this may be an extreme version. I don't know how accurate this is, so don't quote me on it, but that there will be two different civilizations on this planet. And there will be those of us who come back into harmony with the earth. We are living in nature, drinking spring water, living in community again, raising children together, dancing to the drum beats. But the mainstream society is actually not meant to know about us. They will hide us from people. The mainstream society will pretty much be Matrix. which I actually tried a little matrix outfit for today because we were talking about quantum healing, but I might wear this in Lemuria. But it will be like everything, it comes to your pod, like you're fed out of an IV pretty much, which I mean, and there's beauty to these technologies, but in this extreme, it's you don't have friends, you don't enjoy food, you don't enjoy sex, you don't enjoy music, you don't enjoy everything, but it's like catered to exactly what you want, which we're seeing right now. Like in Japan, people are preferring AI girlfriends to real emotional women, and now we're seeing just VR everything. You could why travel to the pyramids when you can go to it with VR? It's like, well, the frequency of the pyramids is not going to be there it's not watching it on YouTube makes me go there, but I think a lot of people, I think they're purposely making travel harder. I'm noticing that since 2020, it's so much harder to bags, this and that. Like, I feel like they're making it so you don't want to do these things anymore. So you just stay home and just get everything delivered to your door. And it's tempting, Uber Eats, Amazon, all of these things, it makes you so isolated and you have this illusion that it's more comforting, AKA more happiness, but it's not. It's making us miserable to eat whatever you want by yourself and everyone has their own individualized plastic meal. And so we're already in this shift and it's just getting more and more. It's just a question, which I don't know what your perspective is like right now, we are people who are living in both. We are in technology and we're earth beings, but will it get to this point that we have to if we want to be part of this, we got to get 30 vaccines every day and the other people don't? I'm curious, how long will we be able to be in both?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a great question. Yeah. I don't think I can answer that, to be honest. I also
just my existential questions.
I don't have a vision for when that will be the case. I just know that in general, everything is possible. And that means also for us, I don't think that will be hidden or something like that. I actually think that we will have the chance to have it all. And with all, I don't mean that we would have this other part that you described, because that's not really what resonates with us, right? Because in the end of the day, you can only receive and experience what resonates with you. And if the inside is resonating in beauty and in love and in joy and all of that, you couldn't even have in your life these constraining, lifeless things, basically. So yeah, I see this split, but I don't see how it's going to play out. And I also think there's it's still very dynamic. I don't think it's set in stone. And I would question everyone that would say it's exactly going to be like this and at that time, because I don't think at this point you can actually see that.
Yeah. And I think timelines are shifting. Yeah. Exactly.
So we shape it, and it takes everyone to shape it for themselves, because no one is going to do the work for you. But then again, it's adding up, because if many are doing the work, it's going to help the collective as well.
And I feel we actually witnessed timelines shift with 2020. Yeah. So many people awoken that I don't think it went as originally planned, and a lot of people were like, no, the math isn't mathing right now. And now even the CDC is going back and saying a lot of the things that they issued were untrue and not scientifically backed. And it's interesting though, because at that time, if you said that, you were a conspiracy theorist, you were canceled, you were taken off the internet, and now it's quietly recognized. But then life is you're just kind of meant to move on. But I do feel people woke up so much that they kind of just jumped ship.
Yeah, I agree. But at the same time, then it's a great opportunity when these things happen for all of us and everyone that isn't there yet to really find the truth in our hearts. Because for every topic, you find this message and the opposite message. And, no, this is true. No, that is true. The Democrats are the best. The Republicans are whatever. You always have to choose a side. And why don't you just go in your heart and just feel? And that's one of those practices, because I think you will be insane as a human at some point if you keep trying to figure it all out with your brain. That's one of those things that is happening in the shift right now, because the part that will not make this shift is the one that stays in the brain. And in the brain, you can maybe process 10,000 bits per second. If you go into the quantum field, into where your soul really is, it's billions and billions and billions and billions of bits a second. It's not even a comparison. So people think, wow, with the brain, we're so capable. Sure, we're capable. I mean, the brain is amazing to have. You can figure out amazing things. But if you tap into your knowing, I mean, it's endless supply of information you have there at your access all the time. It's just people have forgotten that. So, and that's where we need to go. If we can access that, then everything is there. There's nothing we need really, and everything will just happen.
They say that one of the actual downfalls of Western civilization was this Socrates statement of, I think, therefore I am. And that's not true.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and what you said about ration actually being on the neutral to lower side of consciousness. Whereas what we were raised with was ration was one of the Greek virtues, you know, to be rational. I remember my dad is an MIT scientist. Being rational and logical were the best things you could ever be. And if you can't with their version of research, then it's simply untrue. Yeah. But that keeps you in the cage.
Yeah.
You know, waiting until someone else proves it. First of all, who's funding these studies? What is their agenda behind it? You know? And I feel a lot of us intuitively feel this, and we know that energy is real. It's just when we are confronted by critics who are saying, well, prove it in these ways, it's hard to make a comeback, you know? So what do you share? And I want to get into Leela Quantum Technologies, which we have the Infinity Box right here. And this is a technology you have done so much research that you guys aren't even a part of. So what does that research look like to measure energy and frequency?
Yeah, so you can calibrate fields on the Hawkins scale, the actual consciousness level, and the technology we developed, this is like one part of it. It vibrates higher than any other product on Earth currently that is publicly available. I must say that because possibly there is something out there hidden that we don't know about. Now, what does that mean? And what other measurements can you take? Because there's not a quantumometer right now, so you couldn't really determine with a scientific instrument the strength of quantum energy in the block, for example. You couldn't, because science is playing catch up. And it's actually also normal, because in a way it's ancient technology, but it's completely newly developed. Like, so this is not, I mean, it's a similar understanding that Tesla worked with, frankly, but it's not Tesla technology. And it's also nothing we got through just a vision.
And you're referring to Nicola Tesla.
Yeah, Nikola Tesla. Not the company. Tesla.
Yes.
Two very different things.
Yes, the OG.
Thank you for making that clear. Yeah. And what you can measure is you can look at biological systems and what is the impact of it, for example, right? So you can measure your blood, for example, or your heart rate variability, or, I mean, a lot of different things, your energy production of your human cells, for example. There's lots of different methods. And then what happens if you introduce Wi-Fi, for example? What happens, to your blood? Does it clot? Yes, with Wi-Fi. Do your white blood cells start to be paralyzed through Wi-Fi? Yes. That's things you see very, very quickly. And that's not random. It actually just happens over and over again. A lot of different things happen. Now, when you introduce this technology, you see the opposite effect of that. You see a complete balancing effect of physiological systems. So you can see, and we can claim that now because it's been studied over and over again by multiple institutes, that you can reverse stage 1 and stage 2 of blood clotting within 10 minutes, as an example. And that is quite powerful. And that's, it's just energy. Yeah, I mean, we're just energy. So remember, people, that's what we are at core. And then it makes sense that if you're introducing the the most fundamental layer of energy, basically source energy, and you can tap into that. It's like you walking through the desert without any water for hours, and then you're almost dead, and then there's someone offering you a bottle of water and you drink it. You're hydrating. And this feeling energetically is what happens to the body when you're tapping into such a powerful field. That's why your blood starts to reorganize in a positive way. That's why, it was shown by a university professor in 5 randomized double-blind studies that wound healing of actual human cells accelerates by 50 to 100% when you tap into that field. That ATP production, which is that's the currency of our body, so the energy that our cells produce, can increase by 20 to 29%. So it's all possible, and we don't even need to, have surgery for that, or swallow a million supplements. We can do all these things too. I mean, I'm not saying we shouldn't, but first let's take care of our biofield. It's something we've completely forgotten, to take care of our biofield. And those are some of the things you can do to measure these before and after effects. We went as far as actually having a clinical study with 42 autistic kids in India that we actually didn't do. It was a clinic in India that reached out to us because they heard about positive results with autistic kids that, were reported. And it was amazing. After 6 months, there were a couple kids off the spectrum. Now, that doesn't happen on average and didn't happen on average, but there was a 20 basis point reduction in the so-called ADDIC score over 6 months. And so the ADDIC score is how they measure where you are on the spectrum. And everything in regards to language skills, focus, attention span, and things like that improved significantly. And that's quite remarkable that you can just with energy bring the body and the energy system again into a state where it's acting as it's supposed to be acting. And then also you have neutralized these energetic stressors, because EMFs, for example, even an electric car, don't bother you a little bit when you are in this field.
How do you get in the field?
Yeah. So with this, for example, we're in the field right now.
Okay.
So you couldn't measure any negative effects of EMF on your body, on my body, on anyone else's body here in the proximity. So the study that the Besa Institute in Europe did, that's the largest independent testing and research institute in Europe for biofeedback and biosystems analysis. They went as far as getting the most powerful electric car on the market in Europe. I can't say the brand. And then had people drive it and test them before and then test them when they're driving it. And they did all these tests that I described earlier, having a passenger that's on the phone, you're on the phone while you're driving for an hour, you're charging the battery, all these different tests. And then as soon as you introduce this or something similar that we have, it's neutralized. And so what's happening on an energetic level, these destructive waveform patterns that hit you, the 5G, for example, or 4G, or the battery operating, right? That's something that is destructive to our energy system and therefore also to our bodies. It's harmonized in a way so that it's like if you hit me in the face, that's the analogy. Please don't do that and try it. But if you hit me in the face, it hurts. If you give me an acupressure on the neck, it's beneficial, right? And that is pretty much what's happening with these waveform patterns, because the quantum energy that can be worked with is pure, and it's the most fundamental layer of energy. So it's the umbrella, basically. All the frequencies that exist within the quantum field. And also the electromagnetic spectrum is a higher level because it's physical already. So that just gets transformed. So you still have the signals because you can use your phone still, it's no problem, but it's not harmful anymore. So in a way, that's what we've envisioned when we develop this, that we can live with technologies out there that have cool advantages. I mean, I used to work at T-Mobile. I used to be a VP at T-Mobile, and it's fun. You develop new stuff, new phones, and you think about how people can be more connected. That's what the vast majority of the people in that industry think about. It's not like a bunch of conspiracy guys that are trying to hurt humanity with new frequencies. No, they're thinking about great ways and how you can connect and what the next phone should have in terms of features. But there are negative impacts, on our health, long-term, mid-term, but also even short-term. And that's very, very clear. I mean, anyone that says that's not true, I'm happy to debate them and show them the over 1,000 independent studies that are peer-reviewed that show that. But to live with that and not have the negative impacts. And I think that is the time right now also, because we can have it all and we don't need to be impacted in a negative way.
So what is an infinity box? What is it made out of? Like, how does it have these powers to it?
So the material is not the reason. So we could make this in gold, but then it would be not affordable for people. So in this case, it's sandblasted golden aluminum, what you find here in terms of the material, but it's the way we charge it. So we infuse it with super concentrated pure quantum energy. And that is the little breakthrough, because we found a way on how to concentrate and harness that energy in a way, I would almost say never done before. That's not true, because there are people, and also in ancient times, that knew how to do that. It's just nowadays, that knowledge is not really there anymore. And so when you then align these plates that are charged, it creates this field. So it's very strong inside. It's like a quantum sun. So inside, if you tap into it, you probably feel a tingling when you put your hand inside. And you can measure instantly even greater effects on your body because you're tapping into that. Now, it has also radius, which in this case is actually over 1 kilometer. And the EMF harmonization more or less happens like a 400, 500 meter radius, which is, let's call it 1,200 feet radius. And it does a lot of other things. For example, you can measure water, right? So the Emoto Institute out of Japan that you probably have heard of, they tested our technology and what it does to water. And they found it improves water faster and better than any other method they ever tested before.
So how do you infuse it with quantum energy?
Well, that's the only secret sauce that I'm not going to share.
I know where does the quantum energy come from?
Yeah, I know you would ask that question, but that's the only secret sauce that we don't share, because that was a lot of sweat and a lot of work that went into this. And we feel like we're doing already enough to making this available for anyone, that they can tap into basically the extension of our technology, because with this, you can infuse quantum energy also into other objects, and you can copy frequencies. You can charge your water, as I said, your foods. There's studies happening as we speak in regards to food sensitivities. That's quite remarkable. Actually, at Dave Asprey's a big biohacking conference, we showed that live on stage. Someone allergic with crab meat got crab meat in his arm with a derma roller, and it instantly got red, and he got these blisters, and it hurt. And I mean, he said he's going to do it, right? Yes. So he knew what's going to happen. So it wasn't like us just trying it on someone. And then they charged the same crab meat live on stage in an infinity block. After 5 minutes, they took it out, put it in his other arm. No reaction, no allergic reaction. That video is still out there on YouTube, actually. We still tell people, don't do that at home. Don't try it at home, because there's more data needed. But yeah, I mean, energy can do some remarkable things.
So how long should one must put their food or water into the box for it to be charged?
Great question. So with this powerful infinity block, a minute is fine for water. I mean, it already is charged after 15 seconds, to be honest. You have a charge already after that, but to have a full charge, I would say a minute. And with foods, we say with this version here, 3 minutes. If you have food sensitivities, we recommend do it for 3 minutes. If you never have any food sensitivities, a minute is perfect.
So it's basically infusing that food and water with quantum energy, which neutralizes any, EMFs, radiation, even like maybe non-organic? Does it make an impact on that?
It actually does. I'm very careful and mindful with that because I don't want to tell people buy bad foods and then put it in and eat it.
Right.
Because you should still get organic food. I think that's important. Be as natural as you can be, but it indeed has the capability of reinstating this original primal state, let's say of a raspberry that you put in. It's quite remarkable. And then, there's different testing methods. You probably know people with a Lecher antenna and things like that, right? I mean, they could test literally the food and what impact it has on you and then put it in, and there's no impact.
So if I took 2 raspberries and one of them I charged in here and one I didn't, I gave them to you, would you be able to tell which one?
I would be able to tell you that even without eating it, just by looking at it. But I can sense energies quite well, and that takes some practice. But people can still do that test. And the water test, for example, is frequently done. I mean, we have a large community. It's a private community on Telegram with, I think overall, like over 10,000 people by now they love our products and they do all these tests. And that's like one of the common tests in the beginning. You put water in the block, and the same water you also have in another glass and you didn't charge it. And then just do the blind test with people and say, which one feels better, which one tastes better. Is there a difference? And wow. You can notice that.
And even putting your hands in the box.
Oh yeah, you can put your hands, your feet in there. Yeah.
What about your pets? Can I try to put my dog in there, or will you like turbo blast?
We have tons of pictures of pets in blogs that people post on Instagram or on Telegram. And yeah, absolutely. And
he's already so high vibrational. I can't imagine him being there. It makes no sense. Yeah.
Yeah. We have also a larger blog that's 15 by 15 by 15 inches. It lives in most people's kitchens because then they could put salad bowls in there and all of that. And yeah, you find maybe a cat sitting in there completely, or a dog.
So it's almost like a little like quantum microwave that you put your food and stuff in, of just like charge it up and then it's better. But then you said even being around it has benefits.
Yeah. So if you just have this at home, you don't even do anything with it, it harmonizes your whole home. I mean, up to a farm, because
I'm going to be real with you. I saw in the booklet, it said you have to wait 3 minutes, and I've never waited 3 minutes to eat something before. So I'm always like, oh God, I have to wait 3 minutes. So I haven't been I put it in there for like 10 seconds, but now you're inspiring me and I'm going to keep it in there for all 3 minutes. But at least I know just being around it is helping.
So if you don't have food sensitivities, already after 10, 15 seconds charge, you have a charge in there. I would say to really neutralize a good amount of negative frequencies, I would say a minute is totally enough to do it. You don't need to go with 3 minutes. That's really like, if we had done that experiment with crab meat, for example, I wouldn't have done it after a minute. 3 minutes is the minimum.
Okay. So would you recommend sleeping with it next to your bed?
Not in the first 2 weeks of having it, unless you want to stay awake all night.
Okay.
It is stimulating at first, and your body literally adjusts. So people, if they first have this, and depending on which version, so the Infinity Block is quite powerful. We just, updated it in the beginning of the year, and drink a lot of water in the first 2 weeks, a lot of good water. It's just because you can start to detox.
Maybe this is why I haven't been able to drink coffee the past like 2 weeks.
It could happen.
That's when I got this. And the one thing I charge is my coffee, and I can't even drink the coffee anymore. So maybe my body is just like, you don't want this anymore.
Actually literally be interacting with your energy system that on a higher level, coffee isn't really that good for you. And then this makes it more obvious.
I already know I had coffee sensitivity on my food sensitivity test, but I've just been having it anyways.
Yeah, it makes it more obvious. Yeah. It makes it more obvious.
Interesting, because I was wondering, I'm like, I even was like, did I get a stronger like pot of coffee or something? Like, why can I not drink it anymore? But it's the one thing, as I'm like making the almond milk, I've been putting my coffee in this. So it's been in there for like 2-3 minutes, but then I can never finish it. Interesting.
So just put your juice in there. Now, like Sun Life Organic does.
Yeah. So what do you drink in the morning? Do you drink coffee?
I don't drink coffee anymore since a long time. I mean, when I'm in Italy for a vacation, I tend to every now have like a cappuccino or an espresso, but that's rare. Usually I don't drink coffee. So I drink water most of the day, frankly, and juices.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, maybe now it's just time to switch that up. Interesting. So what about putting our cell phones in there?
Great question. Thank you for asking. You can, because you can also measure negative effects of your cell phone on the human body if you use it, right? So now, and we actually have it here, right? Which is not a great place. You see testosterone levels in men drop since the 70s, I think, quite significantly, and not just in humans. Actually, that happens in all animals that got tested. And you can put your phone in there, and then it's being charged, not battery charged, but it's infused with quantum energy. And then afterwards, you cannot measure negative effects anymore in the human body. And we recommend to recharge it every 3 or 4 months.
Oh, only once every 3 months? It lasts that long?
It lasts that long. Well, metals actually hold the quantum charge forever. I mean, forever, maybe not really, because we don't know what the next G's will be, because EMFs...
I just have all my friends over to charge up their phones every 3 months.
There you go.
Some seva.
And not just that, but also the jewelry. They'll see that. If you have a golden watch or something, gold, something, whatever, you put it in, you'll see the vibration will be higher.
No.
Yeah, I mean, that's something you can do. And with the phone, indeed, it's for 3-4 months. You'll have a different vibration, and there's no negative impacts of EMF.
What about like pillowcases? That might be a good thing to charge. Or does that do anything?
You can. I mean, so cotton, for example, and all of those regular clothes, they don't transmit a lot of quantum energy. So it's not going to be a big charge, but that's also a good thing, because you don't want... So let's say you had a lot of silver fabric in your linens,
My hand in here now.
Sure, you
taking this more seriously now.
So if you had a lot of silver, for example, in your pillowcase, right, and then you were to charge it, the silver would have such a strong emission then of quantum energy, because it holds and transmits the energy very well. It may be way too stimulating for the night, right? So yeah, you can do all these things. I mean, I played tennis on the national level.
Do you put your racket in here?
I put my racket in there. I put my shoes in there. I put
We won't announce this, so you're not
kicked out of the league
for cheating. This is the new,
well,
steroids.
Everyone can do it.
Yeah, exactly. They're not testing for it, right? Or I guess they can.
Yeah, but that's the one like more athletic side. And I mean, you can.
Can I put people in here, like guys I try to date, like just blast them up, put them some good energy, make them a little less toxic for me,
always check with your heart if you can do it, and then you can. So, but then the opposite side. So I do a lot of Kundalini yoga, and I'm also a teacher. I don't really teach much other than sometimes at events, but that's where you also really notice this energy, right? So if you're in meditation, for example, if you meditate, you have some practice, and then maybe, I don't know, have it closed or put your hands inside during that, and just feel how deep you can go and what you can tap into, because that's something that we can't study, right? Really, but that's for me the most exciting part, right? The impact it has on consciousness and on our own, like developing our own power and accessing that again. That's really what it does.
Yeah. So cool. And we're going to have the link for it below for listeners so they can try it out. I'm curious, why did you make it a square and not a pyramid? Does the shape have to do with it?
That's a great question. We actually were thinking about a pyramid. Okay. That was one of our prototypes, to be honest, but it's difficult to ship. It's difficult to deassemble for people and then take it to a vacation, for example. And it's very difficult to put things inside.
Yeah.
So here you can, put a cup in there easily, and the larger ones, just put your salad bowl in there and take it out. You can lay in it literally. I mean, you fit in with your upper body. I mean, most people at least. Things like that you couldn't do with a pyramid.
Got it. Because I've seen those giant pyramids that people like sit in for meditation. I don't know what they're called.
Yeah, that's a different thing. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, these like copper.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's more about the actual shape of it rather than this is more about the quantum healing.
Exactly. Because this is really infused with pure quantum energy. And very importantly, some people ask, okay, so it's not plugged in. Yeah, it's not plugged in, because if it was plugged in, actually, it wouldn't work this way. Because if you plugged it in and you added electricity or magnetism, for example, then it would destabilize the field and you would have benefits and disadvantages at the same time. So that's why, you don't want any electricity in there.
Got it. So when you charge it up, the kind of metal this is, it must hold it for a significant amount of time. And that's why you don't need to charge it again.
We estimate at least 300 years.
Oh, wow. Okay. Pass it along to your great grandkids.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I always say.
Yeah. Well, they probably won't need it then. They're going to be like, wow, y'all really needed this infinity box to help. We're just living in Lemuria now.
That's very possible. Yeah.
Interesting.
And that's actually, so that sparks a thought, and I think it's worth sharing. So what we want to do is actually that people develop these skills on their own, because in the end of the day, you can do all of those things. Like if you're very tuned in, you can sleep under a 5G tower and it doesn't bother you, because you're in your consciousness so strong that it doesn't need to affect you. But the vast majority of the people isn't there. So it helps them to actually train your own system. If you have this for, let's say, 2 weeks, 3 weeks in your home, and then you go somewhere to a grocery store, you will be in a higher vibration even without it, because you have already started to vibrate higher. That's literally what it does. It retrains your body, starts to remember, your energy system starts to remember all that, because it's your nature. It's our nature, right, to vibrate high and to be in full abundance. It's just we need, coming out of the Kali Yuga, that's where we forgot everything. Yeah. So now it's time to remember it.
Well, these vibrational pick-me-ups, so I don't know if you've been to Bali before. Have you been to Bali?
No.
So there is a temple there called Tirtha Empul, which I highly recommend for everyone listening to this right now. It's a water purification temple. And I'm sure you've seen those pictures of it in Bali that it's like 27 little spouts, and it's like 27 different layers of karma that you're releasing when you go through it. Very, very, very sacred water. So much ceremony and intention there. And I really recommend people because Bali is a very conscious island. And if you don't treat her with respect, she will be gnarly and kick you out. So I really recommend for people when you go to Bali to go to that temple, because it just purifies anything in your field. That changed my life, going to that water pure, especially when I was in my divorce. When I went there, I went into, it was so gnarly. And then like me coming out of it, I messaged my ex and we're both like, please forgive me. I forgive you. I thank you. I love you. We're like, ho'oponoing, like right after from this temple. And it just shows the power of this. And then it was like a before and after of my energy, because the frequency of the water, the intention of the water, the layers of it purified my field so deeply that it was like this debris in my consciousness that was like other people's voices and what I thought I should do and fears and all of the things, that it just swept that away, that I could just see with love and the eyes of God. And then again, I went back before I left Bali. And I also noticed this when I go into a waterfall in general. I'm a very water being. So when I go into a waterfall, it's like an energy. And even if we just take showers, I mean, we notice a difference in our energy before and after take a shower. It's like your vibrational state has shifted. So I feel like these are really tangible things that we can feel. My thoughts are different. The conversations I have are different. I have more rose-colored glasses on because of this energetic shower that I took.
Yep. No, I'm glad you say all that. Yeah, because I mean, that's all possible. Yeah.
I think ideally, hopefully in this lifetime, we will have access to hot springs and going in, just even like going to nature, like going to the mountains and spending time doing that and making that more part of our cities and landscapes, and then using technologies like this when we can't, and having them in our homes, having them in schools. Like the amount of schools that are, again, built under 5G towers and just have so much. Now schools, I think, don't have teachers, a lot of them. The kids are on iPads and they're meant to teach themselves. And it's like, okay, until we create this new system, what are the tools that we can use to help, And I know I have a lot of friends right now struggling with IBS. That's such a huge thing. So little things like that it just takes up so much of your energy when you are so stressed about what you can eat and what you can't, and your stomach's going to hurt. So like little things like this that can help us just live easier lives. We'll have higher thoughts, higher actions, create a higher world.
And we can live longer, like you said initially in the beginning, right? And I totally agree with that. All of what I'm seeing, what's not possible. I mean, 120 years, easy.
Yeah, Pete Diamonitis, who's a futurist, I'm sure you've heard of him. He said that we likely in this lifetime will experience people living 130 years.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, where can people learn more about your technologies? And we will have the link in the show notes as well for people to get theirs.
So 2 things. One is leelaq.com, leelaq.com. That's the website. Obviously, you can look up information there and all of that. But then we have this Telegram group. It's a private Telegram group, though, because we don't want any bots or anyone that's like really not interested in this. And you can find that through the website. There's a Telegram link. So if you just want to, not take my word for it, but maybe listen to some other people out there, thousands of people that just experience this technology and use it on a daily basis, go ask a question there. For example, just listen in. It's a high vibe community. So I always recommend, if you're interested, just get involved somehow, listen in. That's the 2 ways.
Lovely. Well, we'll have both of those links listed below. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you learned a lot. I know I did. It definitely inspired me to even be more attuned to energy and also just take power over or for the choices that we can make in our daily lives and be a little bit less on our phones, a little bit more in nature, and trusting that this new paradigm doesn't have to be a zero-sum game of choosing one or the other, but we can actually have it all and, come back to this frequency where technology and spirituality are serving each other. So I'll have those links listed in the show notes. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with future episodes. We dive deep into all of the mysteries, and I'm so excited to continue sharing with you. All right, I'll see you in the next one.
Trust your intuition, trust your inner wisdom, trust your inner guidance. Close your eyes and listen. Swing to let go. So trust your intuition, trust your inner wisdom, trust your inner guidance. Close your